What else is what? Okay, or else then we just. I want me to go back. Move the table in. Yeah, that's something for the cat. That's sense. Yeah. I don't think we need to. Top left. Just push the inputs in. Pardon? Are you using that for? Yeah. I'm gonna cast it. Yeah, just move. Hello, testing. Testing to see if Zoom can hear me. Yeah, we might be. Is the Zoom works? Hello, hello. We're still talking. We're still talking. Yeah. Seeing if you can hear. Can you hear? 1, 2, 1, 2. Hello, hello, hello.
Oh, that's fine. Okay, let me just check. No.
So this isn't well, this is we can't read this, but you know that Zoom tab. Let's see.
You can hear.
You can mute now. No, that's not. No, you can't mute now.
Okay.
Ready to fair? Can't hear it. This was 2 minutes ago.
Maybe you do. So it should be on the side. If you share the screen. The way.
This one.
Yeah, share one.
You're unmuted.
What you do stop stop just
It's where is it?
No, I think it's screen 2 you want to show.
yes stop
That one.
Sure.
sharing interest.
There's no sponsor.
What you do
You have to start the presentation. Let's out that first. Other top right.
Just stop.
people have the thing, take that. Click the one that is.
Yeah, that thing though, it's just
Just minimizing.
you do that.
Just trust us. We should do something. Okay, I think we are good to start. Hopefully, people can hear us online. Let us know in the chat if you can't. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Adil. I'm here today to talk about embracing diversity, in particular, what living with a disability is like. To my right here, I'll introduce this young man. His name is Harry. Harry is my right-hand man. He is my personal assistant. We've been working together for the last 4 years. It's been a long 4 years for Harry. Working with me is not easy. So I've enjoyed it. I don't know how much you enjoyed it, but I definitely have. So so Harry will be helping me out this evening. Just to give you a quick rundown of what we'll do. So hopefully over the next sort of 30, 40 minutes, I'll go through kind of my life's journey. And then we'll have a bit of time for questions at the end. And in terms of questions, I welcome any and all questions. I'm going to be an open book for you. And I think one of the best ways we learn is through asking questions and asking. Sometimes we can be thinking that we want to ask a question, but we think maybe it's not appropriate. How will the other person feel? I guarantee you today, you can ask me anything, right? I'm going to be an open book. There's no judgment from my side, right? And I don't think there's judgment from anybody else in the room in terms of questions. Right? In fact, I would challenge you to put me on the spot a bit, right? See if you can catch me out. So without further ado, we'll move on quickly to look at disability in itself. Does anyone want to have a go at sort of saying what they think disability might be? If we were to define it, how would we think about what it is? Anyone want to be brave? Put their hand up. Come on, guys. Any of the sisters in the back? Okay, yeah, go.
So, if there's any practice in anyone's life which causes an hindrance for normal daily activities of daily living. So, disability can be eyesight, being able to walk, function basically. So, anything that's affecting daily function. Also, cognitively as well. So, in terms of thoughts, putting thoughts together, and again, how that affects daily function.
Yeah, you have absolutely hit the nail on the head. So if we go on to the next point here. So this is the definition as defined by the Equality Act in the UK. And this is kind of how the government and the law kind of look at disability. Why is that not moving? I'm not sure why that slide isn't moving. 1 second, let's see if we can figure it out.
Just maybe skip and reshare again. If I
the display is disconnected.
okay,
It was further up. It's possible. Multiple displays down. Multiple displays. Let's say
yep.
Is the TV turning?
Yeah, it's cool. I saw the mouse, but it's black space. Press duplicate.
Maybe disconnect and reconnect.
Yeah, disconnect. Huh? Yeah, it's just pictures and stuff on the Okay, go back to display. Into displays again.
Just tell the people on the call that the slides are disconnected, so we're just fixing.
Yeah, we're just fixing the slides for those on the. Unfortunately, it's disconnected. There we go. That should be connected. Clicking. And I think if we stop clicking on them.
We can just plug the HDMI in.
There we go. Sure. Do you know what? Just share that screen. Just on the screen share. Yeah. Just share that screen. Yeah, just share that with the Zoom people. Share. That's
And
my.
just play it.
Then just play this. Yeah, just. Okay. What we'll do, hopefully that should work. So, yeah, if we go back one second. Yeah, so this was the definition we were talking about. So this is as defined in the Equality Act, and this is kind of how the law and the government in the UK look at disability. So they say you're disabled under the Equality Act of 2010 if you have a physical or mental impairment. It has a substantial and long-term negative effect on your ability to do normal daily activities. Now, they put substantial and long-term in quotation marks because there's a huge debate around what is substantial and what is long-term. And a lot of people with disabilities, when they're fighting for their rights, they're fighting against those two terms, looking at what is substantial and what is long-term. So this is kind of how the law looks at it. Then if we go on, there's kind of a bit more of a medical definition. So this is how the Center for Disease Control looks at it, so the CDC, and they say a disability is any condition of the body or mind impairment that makes it more difficult for the person with the condition to do certain activities. So you were talking about activity limitation, that comes in there, and interact with the world around them, participation restrictions. So I like this definition a little bit better because it's kind of talks about neurodiversity as well a little bit, and kind of encompasses that within it. I will say these are two definitions, two different definitions. There are lots of definitions out there. There are lots of different models of disability. There are lots of different ways to look at, think about disability in a wider sense. And hopefully, you know, beyond this event this evening, we'll have an opportunity to explore some of that and to think about those things. But to that, I think it's more about giving you guys a bit of an insight to what living with a disability is like. So I'm going to share my life story with you now. And I love talking about myself, so this should be good. Good for me anyway. So first thing, next. So growing up, there's a picture of me as a baby. I like this picture because I've got a fist held up there. I was ready to beat anybody up, even at that young age. So I was born in Essex on April 30th, 1995. And I came on my due date. There were no complications at birth. I came to ask my parents firstborn. So, you know, very happy. I was my grandparents, first grandchild on my dad's side, so everyone's kind of excited about Adil coming into the world. But little did they know what was around the corner. So next slide. So then, age 3, I was diagnosed with a condition, and my diagnosis happened because we were visiting Pakistan, and my mother's aunt, so my grandmother's older sister, said to my mum that, oh, I think there might be something a little bit wrong with Adil. He's not walking properly. And she kind of took it, as a bit of like, okay, we'll see what happens. And she was quite adamant and quite serious. And this was a woman that had, raised 5 children of her own, right, into their middle age and beyond. So she kind of knew what she was talking about. But when we came back after that trip, she rang the same aunt, my mum's aunt rang my parents and said, have you guys been to the doctors yet? And my parents were like, no. And she was like, well, you guys need to go and see. I think there definitely is something amiss. So my parents took that on board. They went to the doctors, and the GP as well kind of brushed them off and said, look, it's your first child. We think you might be overly concerned. Some children are a bit slow in terms of development. There doesn't seem to me to be anything amiss here, but if you're still concerned, come back to me in a couple of weeks. So at that point, my parents kind of watched me. They as well started to notice things in the way I walked, the way I stood up from sitting down. And they basically, they went back to the GP, and at that point, the GP referred us to the local pediatric department at the hospital. And when we were there, they did a blood test. And in your blood test, they looked at something called the creatine kinase level. And that tells you how much stress your muscle cells are under. And in the average person, that value is between 200 to 400. In my case, it was 18,000. So immediately they knew that something is wrong, and they knew it was a muscle issue, and they knew that, we're dealing with some sort of muscle issue. They weren't sure what it was. So at that point, they referred us to a specialist neuromuscular team in central London. And that team then did genetic testing, and they said, right, they identified the condition, and they said it was called limb girdle muscular dystrophy. Scientific name is 2-beta sarcoglycanopathy. Right, so that's kind of how my diagnosis came about. Next. So then we have my prognosis, right? So this is where the doctors kind of tell you what you can expect with this condition. And so the condition basically wears away your muscles over time. And it starts with the bigger muscles, so arms, legs, shoulder, and hip girdles. And then eventually moves on to sort of your smaller muscles as well. And we have over, I think, 650 muscles in the body. It affects each and every one of them. So, the prognosis at that time was that there is no cure. We can only manage the condition and try and make others' life as comfortable and easy as possible. They also said that you can expect that by the age of about 8 or 9, that Adil will stop walking. You can expect that there'll be a kind of gradual weakness beyond that in terms of Adil's physical ability. So yeah, that's what they said. Okay, so if we go on. So off the back of that, obviously, I was living life. I knew I wasn't like the other kids. I didn't really know why that necessarily was. By age 7, I was using a wheelchair part-time. Because what would happen is I would play out with other kids and then I would get tired after 15, 20 minutes and I'd have to sit down and take a break. And I don't know if you've ever been to a family gathering with kids, but when one kid has to sit around, take a 15-minute break, you can try and explain to the other kids, other needs to take a break, let's all take a break. Not everyone wants to take a break. So you end up kind of being a bit sort of left out by yourself in that sense. And I felt that. Next slide. And I was angry because of that. And I was very angry at the world, my parents. In a sense, I blamed them to a certain degree for having a child in the first place. And obviously, I wasn't silly, so I knew, that was a genetic thing, like, it's come from my parents in that sense. And every sort of 2 to 3 months, I'd have a massive emotional breakdown, and I would cry for several hours. And I'd be like, why is this happening to me? Why is nobody else experiencing this? Why am I by myself in this? And basically throw all my toys out of the pram. And it was a hard time, but my mum actually, she kind of flipped the switch a little bit in that she said to me, she was very honest with me, she said, look, Adil, I'm going to be totally honest with you, we can't understand what you're going through, even as your parents. We can understand a little bit, but truly, even we won't know. And neither will anybody else in this world. And we can help you to a certain point, but there is a point beyond which even we can't help. But she said, do you know somebody that can? That someone is alone, right? And so she said, what you need to do is you need to pray, you need to speak to Allah, and speak to Allah just how you speak to us. Right? Share your problems, tell him your frustrations, right? And he will help you. Now, obviously, if any of you ever tried negotiating with children, but they don't ever listen to you on the first try. So I brushed it off, I was like, yeah, all right, whatever. Still ain't gonna work, all of this. So I would carry on trying, I would carry on having issues in that sense. But slowly, I think in the back of my mind, it built up to being something that would kind of slowly kind of change my mindset. So I was going to mainstream school, and then I joined MarML School, which is the school for special needs. And so for the first time in my life, I was with other young people who live with disabilities. And I was basically, seeing other people with disability and living with them and seeing how they experience life. And for me, it was very, very kind of, it was kind of a two different situations. In one situation, I was happy, I was quite positive. In another situation, I did feel like it wasn't really somewhere where I belonged, because there were a lot of students there that had learning difficulties, and I didn't. And so at times I felt like it was a little difficult for me in that sense. But overall, it was a very positive experience. And then in 2004, at age 9, basically, I stopped walking. And this was probably the most drastic change in my life. It didn't happen overnight. I didn't wake up one day and I stopped walking. It happened over a very gradual time period. So over the course of about a year. So if you imagine, in September, we see the length of this hall today. I could walk the length of that hall. By January, I could only walk 3/4 of it. By March, half of it, right? By April, quarter of it. And by June, July, a few steps. right? So over the course of a year, I saw myself basically in front of my own eyes kind of deteriorate, and I couldn't do anything about it. So again, it led to a lot of frustration and a lot of crying as well about life and kind of the situation I was in. So after that, I was kind of in a wheelchair for a time. And then from age 9, it was a manual wheelchair. From age 10 and a half, it was kind of it was an electric wheelchair because I lost the ability to propel myself. That's a picture of me selling some food at the school tuck shop with the rest of my class. So you can see there are a variety of people with a variety of different disabilities. Next slide. I also started attending mainstream school part-time. So this was when I joined the secondary department. They had a connection with a mainstream school, which was on the same site. And so I was attending lessons there because academically, I was kind of working at national curriculum levels, but physically I needed the support that the special educational needs school could provide. So I was kind of going to 2 schools, and it was a good experience for me, actually. I think I learned a lot through that. Next slide. And I slowly began to accept my circumstances. So going back to that crying and what my mum has kind of told me, that had sunk in by this point. And I had sort of accepted my circumstances. I said, okay, well, this is my life. I now need to figure out a way to deal with it. And I slowly kind of started to do that. And a lot of that was in terms of attitudinal change and also recognizing where and how the blessings come, right, from Allah. And it's not always easy to see that. And it takes very much a change in our mindset to be able to see those blessings. But once we do, they are there and they are easy to spot. Next slide. So one thing I didn't talk about in my prognosis bit was around life expectancy. So one thing the doctors did say, and I didn't know this at the time, but they said to my parents that the average age of someone with father's condition is 18, right? I'm 28 now. When I found out about this properly, I was 14. And the way I found out about it was I was late for school one day, and normally the bus would come pick me up from home. On this day, I was late getting up ready, so the bus went without me, and my dad was dropping me off, and we were in the car. And my dad goes to me, yeah, I'm 14. My dad goes to me, like, Adil, what do you want to do when you're older? Right? Like, what do you want to do as a job, as a career? And I, being the good, typical good son, went, Dad, I'll follow in your footsteps. I'll be a civil engineer. Right? My dad went, okay, very good. Then he went, so how are you going to get on the building site? It's like, easy, Dad. They're going to lay out ramps for me. And I'll get on the building site and Dad goes, well, in amongst all the rubble. I go, yeah, I'll do it. People will help me and all this. And they said to me, Adil, have you ever thought about why they should help you, right? When they could employ somebody else who doesn't need that help? Why should they choose you? And I said, well, because, you have to be fair in this world and all this, that. And he goes, well, you're expecting a lot from people and a lot from society. Like, you might need to adjust your expectations. And then he said as well that, and you have all these grand plans of what you want to do, but have you ever thought that you might not be alive to see it happen or to make it happen, for it to happen to you? And that point, I was like, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, with your condition, right, the average age that somebody lives to is 18, and you're 14 now, right? So, have you kind of thought about that? And the car went silent, and not another word was said. And I got to school, and I'll be honest with you, and I'm sure some of you are thinking here as well now, what a cruel thing for a father to tell his own son that he's going to be dying, right? Or that he is dying, right? That's a very tough thing for a parent to tell their child, also for a child to hear. And that school day was like, yeah, you know, when you're kind of going through the motions of life, but you're in there. That whole school day was like that for me. I was like, well, it's happened. And but then I thought about it, and when I look back at it now, I'm so glad that he did that, because had he not, I was flying on cloud nine, and I would have been thinking about the world and society. And when I would have experienced it, right, as an adult, I would have probably been depressed and disheartened, right? So in a sense, preparing for life and being fundamentally honest, right? Sometimes we don't give young people enough credit, right? Young people can handle a lot, right? And in my view, we need to be honest and upfront, right? When we're discussing with people, particularly when it's family, it's tough, it's not easy. But when you do it in the right way, it can have a massive impact, right? And in my case, it definitely did. So yeah, that's kind of around life expectancy. So I had that in my mind, and then came to kind of a bit of a crossroad in life. We're choosing GCSE options. And my dad said to me, right, you've got two options, right? You pick your GCSEs and you do them, or he said, you can sit at home and you can play games all day on the Xbox. I'll support you in whatever you want to do. But he said, if you're going to do GCSEs, then we're going to do it properly. We're not going to mess around, right? You're going to have to revise and all this. And in my head, I'm thinking, wow, what an opportunity. I can play games all day. And I so wanted to go with that, but for some reason, yeah, some people sound a bit crazy. But I said, no, all right, do the GCSEs. And I think a part of that was wanting to be like everybody else and like my cousins or other friends, you know, in that sense. So I chose to do GCSEs and pursued that in that sense. I'm just going to have a sip of water. Cool, cool. After that, I started developing my skills. So in terms of my attitude towards life, I changed. So PMA is an abbreviation, positive mental attitude. And I think we should all have a positive mental attitude. And what is that? It is the ability to see the positive even in the deepest and darkest of times. Right. So I'll give you a quick example. Right, we're in the masjid, so I'll give a religious example. Right. If out of anger, right, we hit somebody, whether it be our child, brother, sister, whoever, right, that is something we shouldn't do, right, out of anger. When I think about it, I say, well, I'm blessed, because even if I get angry to the point where I want to hit somebody, I physically can't. Allah has taken away the opportunity for me to commit that sin. Therefore, I am blessed, right? So it's a mindset, right? And kind of an attitude, I think, and even trying to identify positive things in the negative, right? When you're, you know, I've been in situations where I've been in hospital, right? But there've been positives that have come out of that. I'll talk about that later on. I also did a bit of sit-down comedy, took part in sports, did some extracurricular activities as well. I was part of a group called Bromley Young Advisors, and we helped advise the Bromley Council on services for young people with disabilities, and what that looks like. That's only more. I got my GCSE results. I got 4 A's and 3 C's. So I was very happy with that. I will say my parents did tell me I could have done better. They probably could have, right? So they don't let me get away just because I'm disabled, right? In fact, quite the opposite. To tell you a story, we use corporal punishment in our household. So if we're naughty, we get slapped. And when I was diagnosed, my parents sat all my extended family down and they said, right, others got diagnosed. Don't you treat others any different? If he messes about, just like you give your own child a smack, we give you full permission to give others a smack as well. And when I heard this, I was like, oh, could you, cruelty to another level. But important is how to treat people equally. So again, further weakness. I got to the point now where I could have feed myself. So I was experiencing that as well. But I learned how to cope with it, I think, a lot better by this point. Next slide. And then sort of accessing other opportunities. Sort of Bromley Youth Council. I attended a national sports leadership camp as well. And then I was choosing to do my A levels. And interesting story about how we can underestimate people with disabilities, even when they show us what they're capable of. So I had shown them what I was capable of with GCSEs. And when it came to picking A levels, I said to them, I want to do maths, physics, and chemistry. They were like, whoa, Adi, that's a lot, right? That's a lot for the average person, right? So that's definitely a lot for you. And they were like, we think you should only do one. I was like, what are you talking about? I should only do one. I want to do 3. And they were like, well, you might get tired and all this. So I was like, okay, fine. I went home, told my parents. My dad was like, no, you got to go in there and you got to tell them you got to fight for it. So I was like, okay. So I went in the next day and I was like, can you explain to me what is your fundamental issue with me doing 3 A levels? And they said the primary one was we have concern for your health. We don't think you'll be able to cope with it, right? And therefore, we don't think you should do it. And at the time, A-level exams were happening every 3 months. So you do an exam after each unit. So I said to them, okay, fine. He said, meet me halfway. So let me do the 3. In January, if I fail any one of my subjects, I will promise you I'll drop down to do 1 subject, right? And they said, okay, fine, fair enough. We'll meet you halfway. So I did that. Luckily, I didn't fail. And they came to me after that 3 months and they said, the deputy head of the school actually came to me at lunchtime, had lunch with me and said, I will formally apologize to you. We underestimated you and we shouldn't have. Right. So the reason why I tell that story is these are teachers that had 20, 30 years of teaching people with special needs, right, before me, and they underestimated me, right? These are experienced people, professionals who deal with disability day in, day out. So when we think about wider society who do not have that experience, how much are we underestimating people in our community here? How much are we underestimating people and how much they can contribute, right, to our community or to the world even. So just something to think about. Moving on, I was leaving school then after 10 years. So I did my A levels. I got BCD. Again, when I got that, my parents told me I could have done much better. They were right. I could have. But that's what I got. And I was leaving school after 10 years. I was leaving an environment where I'd been supported. I had all the support that I could ever want or need. Right? And then I'm leaving to do well. At the time, I didn't know what. Right? And it was a scary time. And And the next slide, I'm going to share a video with you, which is basically when we leave the school had a tradition that when you leave the school, they have a highlight reel of all your sort of big moments in the school. And they play it and they let you kind of choose the music to go along with it. I'm not going to play the music, but I played the slideshow. And it's got pictures that kind of shows you a bit and some videos as well. It shows you some of my life a little bit as well in that sense. So I'll play the video. Hopefully it works. Can you click? No, so it does freeze here for a second, but it will start again. It's a very old video, it's 10 years ago. Is it? Oh, cool. So wait, what happened? Well, after I left school, I did think the world was going to end, but it didn't. Luckily, I went to Bromley College to do AAT and accountancy. So I did level 2 and level 3. So I carried on with the education side of things. Next. I also became a trustee of a charity called National Challenge, which was a national charity at the time. They organized basically sports competitions for young people with disabilities. And I was 19 when they asked me to join their board of trustees. I was probably the youngest trustee ever, I would imagine, in the country at the time. Typically, trustees tend to be in their 60s, 70s. So it was a running joke on our board that I was only, I think, 3 months older than the charity itself. So I was like the same age as the charity itself and was sitting on their board. So it was a unique opportunity and I kind of grabbed it with both hands. I was scared about it as well because I had very little experience at that level. So, but it was an interesting and is an interesting thing. I'm still doing it, so it's good. Yes. I also started speaking about disability in schools, in colleges, and certain organizations would invite me through various connections through my network. And I'll do exactly this, share my life story with them, and basically try and create an awareness and an empathy around disability. In that picture, I'm delivering a speech to a theatre probably full of about 1,500 people. So, it was large crowds and then small crowds as well. So then dun, 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 this happened. I put this slide in and I was in 2 minds about putting it in because as you can see, it's a slide of me in hospital. But for a lot of families that have disability and people who live with disability, this is a reality as well, right? And we shouldn't shy away from it. So Saturday, 17th December 2016, a date that will forever be etched into my family's minds. Going back to my life expectancy issue, I was 21 when this happened. And basically what happened is I had a cold on a Tuesday, and like any cold, didn't feel any different. Thought I'd get better and was making a recovery. So much so that on the Friday evening, I had a shower and I spent 3 hours talking to my mum, dad, and sister. And we were kind of sitting in the room together and sort of laughing and joking. Went to sleep that night, couldn't get to sleep, couldn't lie down flat on my back. In the early hours of the morning, much to my dismay, but I'm glad they did it now, obviously, my parents decided to call the ambulance because I was struggling to breathe. They called 111. They said, what's the situation? They said, are they struggling to breathe? Ambulance was sent out. They came in and they said, you're struggling to breathe. Your heart rate is highly elevated. We're going to take you in. And this wasn't too worrying at that point. But when we got into the ambulance, the first time worry is that is my mum and sister that went with me, because we didn't think it was that serious. Right. So dad thought, okay, let dad stay home, get some sleep and join us there later on. My mum and sister went with me. And we got into the ambulance and they said, we're going to take you in under blue lights. We'll only take you in under blue lights with sirens if they need to get to the hospital quickly, right? If it's a matter of urgency. We got there, they did tests, and long story short, I don't remember exactly what happened, but the story that my family told me later on was that we kind of got in there and I lost my mind a little bit and didn't really know where I was, what was going on. I was struggling breathing. The doctors very quickly, what you see in the pictures there is a central line. So they put in a central line that goes straight into your jugular vein. And they do that when they need to administer drugs quickly and effectively. And they only do that under sort of more severe cases, right? So long story short, my family then get taken into this room, the dreaded room in the hospital. And the doctor tells them, my sister's there as well, with my 2 younger brothers as well at this point. And you've got to remember in the context of life expectancy of 21, the doctor said 18. They say to my parents, father's got severe pneumonia, right? And basically the next 24 hours are critical. If there is anyone that wants to come and see Abdul, call them in now, right? Basically, plan out this funeral, in other words. And my mum asked the doctor the question, she said, have you ever seen anybody else make it out of this situation, this severe situation? And the doctor said, 10 years ago, there was a man who had the same severity of infection, right? He made it through. But he said, Mrs. Garney, I'm not going to put you under any illusions. This man was healthy. He had no other underlying conditions, right? And at this moment in time, I'm giving a 5% chance, right, for others to make it through this. So at this point, I'm kind of in our consciousness. What I remember is being in a room and doctors are all around me. They're shouting things and they're, wanting to stick needles in, or I'm screaming and all this. But luckily, the grace of Allah, I started to make a recovery, right? And I was admitted into hospital, into intensive care, and I was discharged less than a week later from intensive care. And the story in the hospital got so renowned. There were nurses and doctors coming from other wards to hear about the kid with underlying sort of breathing issues, heart condition, who'd made it through such severe bout of pneumonia. So again, I would say, going back to positive mental attitude, when I came out of this, right, and I was very it's a very sobering experience, right? But at the same time, there was a lot, when I think back and I look back, it was a hard time, but there's a lot of blessings that came out of this as well. Like, I now know what it feels like to have pneumonia, right, and breathing issues. I didn't before. So now at the earliest time, I can tell my parents, right? So blessing from Allah. My parents and I know now how to work with the emergency systems in hospitals to get seen quickly and effectively. Right? We know the key words to say. Again, blessing from Allah. Right? So when I talk about seeing the positive and the negative, these are the kinds of things I'm talking about. In finding that mindset, and I promise you now, it's not easy to do, right? But it can be done, right? And it's a slow journey, but we can get there. So yeah, that's kind of that sort of chapter in my life. Tough time, but an interesting time. Made it out on the other side. Cool. And now, so after that, it's very much back to life. That's a picture of me with Jack Petrie, who is now, man, you can look at the Jack Petrie Foundation. I won't explain much about it just in the interest of time, but he's done a lot for charity and young people. And yeah, it's back to life. So I went back to college. I carried on with my volunteering, right? And I carried on living life. Next slide. Then in 2018, I got this fantastic job opportunity. And like the way this happened was through that Panathlon challenge, through connections, through a network, right? Somebody headhunted me for this job. It was an ex-Paralympian. She was looking to set up a consultancy company to talk about disability in organizations and try and increase the employment opportunity for those with disability, right? And when I talk about sort of, there's this thing we talk about, Allah helping us from places we cannot even imagine, right? This is one of those situations. I desperately wanted a job, right? Because cousins my age, other people my age had a job, right? I never applied for a job because the reality for me was when they employ me, they need to employ a personal assistant who's going to help me to do my job. So business-wise, doesn't make sense to do that, right? So who's going to do it? Right? So that was my first thought. Second thought was, I need to do a job that I enjoy and that I like, right? And there's not very many things out there that I could do in that sense. But when this job came, Like, I cannot tell you how perfect that this job opportunity was and is for me. Like it, and I remember saying this to my mum at the time. It is like Allah listened to what was in my heart, right? And not only gave it to me, but gave it to me in the exact way I wanted it, right? I mean, my job, I sit there in front of people and I talk, right? One easiest job in the world, but nicest job in the world as well. And it's something I can do, right? And do independently, right? In the sense, I mean, I've got Harry with me, Harry goes with me to these meetings and things, but I'm the one talking, I'm the one doing. So, again, when you really want something in the art and you strive for it, right? In my view, right, and what we learn from the Quran as well is that Allah will give it to you, right? You'll get there. It takes the effort, but you'll get there. Next slide. I carried on being a trustee with Pan Challenge. I still do that now. In 2022, I was approached by another charity called Vibrance. They organize social care for people with learning difficulties and disabilities. And they asked me to join their board of trustees as well. Their turnover each year is about 15 million. So a much bigger charity than Panathlon. Panathlon is about 1 billion. So it was a step up in that sense. But yeah, important. These are two causes that are close to my heart, and I give my time up for them. Because one, I want to, but I feel like, and I would say this to anybody here, like if you feel like you can add something somewhere, do it, right? It's not easy, but take the time out and do it. And it will be a rewarding experience. Not just does it make you feel good, but also practically. Like I've learned a lot doing that. That has helped me in other areas of life as well. Next slide. So this is the last thing before I finish the questions. In 2022, I was asked to become a governor. I was asked. What happened is marginal clause school, so the school I attended, they approached me, not approached me, I approached them, and they were a special needs school, and their governing body, they didn't have anybody with a disability. And I thought, hang on a minute, this don't make sense. Your school for people with special needs, you haven't got anybody with special needs on your sort of governing. So I thought we need to sort this out. So I wrote them and I said, I see you've got an opening, let me in. And they let me in, luckily. So yeah, that's a picture of me, the opening of our new site. So yeah, that's me. That's kind of been my life in a nutshell. I think we've gone a little bit over time, so I don't know how much time we've got for questions, but maybe you can fit that into the panel discussion. Yeah, we'll do that. Cool. So we'll move on to the panel. Thank you very much for listening. Hopefully, it's been of some benefit and some insight. Yeah, thank you very much for listening. But I think we're going to have a panel discussion.
Testing, can you hear me? Yeah, can everyone on the Zoom hear me as well?
We might need to swap places with that.
Is that yes? Can you hear me? Get closer. What about now? Okay, cool. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So I'd love to care for your story. Beautifully told. I think that's important, and I hope everyone benefited from hearing to say, inshallah. So we're going to move on to a panel discussion now. So I'll bring up the panel. So if you could come and just take your seats, and then inshallah, what we'll do is we'll give the audience an opportunity to ask questions. Also in the Zoom, please be open to ask questions. We have people in the room who will tell me if there's a question on Zoom, so we can inshallah take that as well. Okay, I'm just getting everyone sat down. Okay, fine. So shall we go for the room first? Anyone with a question?
You want to intro?
Oh, sorry, apologies. Yes, thank you, Sian. Actually, let's first start with introductions. I'll start from left and move over to the right.
My name is Lisa. I'm kind of first child in I was 6 years old.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Ira and I'm here as a special to have a sister, so I'm Harlan's sister.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Arshad. I'm the father of a son with special needs. He has a rare genetic condition called Kabuki syndrome. I also have a brother with special needs, and it works. I employ people with special needs as part of a general job. Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'm in. Last question. I'll repeat the question in the mics if anyone else.
Yeah, Adil, thanks so much for your attention presentation. Just one question really. When are you available to volunteer?
So Amir's question from the floor is, Ado, when are you going to volunteer for the mosque?
Okay, I have a funny story. Yeah, the reason I'm doing this tonight is because my mum mostly blackmailed me. She said, "Father, you do so much, but you don't do anything for your own community." Right. So when the opportunity came up and I think about sisters, I was like, we were all nice to do something. So I'm around, and inshallah moving forward with the group that I should have thought that with sisters Azza is masses, and we've got a few other members. So hopefully we'll drive forward with some more initiatives and some more events to kind of bring people together and talk about this.
So just for myself, let me add a question on the back of that as well. And so I think just from a community perspective, we're in a nostalgic. There's lots of voluntary work within the mosque. So we're in connection with the wider part probably as well. So the question to the panel is, in terms of your experience with your ability and the community, the nostalgic, if there's an example of in terms of challenges you face, that'd be kind of really good to share with the people in the audience.
In terms of challenges, household excellence is just learning stuff as you're going along. Because often the experience is just very new and very daunting. So our son this mine was firstborn, and when you have your firstborns, I think it's been expressed previously, you don't have any real reference point. You know, other people have children, of course, but you're going through the experience for the first time. There's nothing that really prepares you for parenthood. And our child was diagnosed quite late. He was born very early, born at the age of 28 weeks. I was actually at Hajj at the time, and I got a call from my sister saying, I was near the Haram Sharif, and I got a voicemail saying, no need to panic, but Bobby has just gone into labour. So we tried rushing back, and it was quite an experience. We managed to get back 48 hours, spent a huge amount of time trying to get our visas and our passports back from the London office in Makkah, which was quite tricky. So I mean, that was before he was diagnosed. We just thought he was premature. He was seen by numerous specialists. He had problems with microaspiration, so going into his lungs, he wasn't feeding properly, always getting infections. And we would get this binary response from the doctors and the medics. So half of them would go into the room and say, "Oh, look, what lovely eyes he has. You know, mashallah, very, very nice eye." And the other half said, "Oh, he has quite unusual eyes." And we got him seen by a craniofacial specialist from Great Ormond Street, and he said, "No problem at all. You know, he just has nice big eyes." We got him seen by a geneticist who said, "Let me come back to you." And a little while later, she'd gone away, done a bit of digging, came back and said, "Well, actually, no, what he does have is this genetic condition." At the time he was born, the genetic marker for his condition had not yet been pinpointed in terms of, so he was actually part of a pilot test to identify it. And fast forward, numerous other steps going along the way, trying to learn, you're trying to work out what he's got, to treat it, kind of best therapies are, these sorts of things. And it's really difficult. The unknown, I think, is the biggest, most daunting aspect as a parent, not knowing where it is. And where potentially you might go. But as I said, try not to underestimate. You have hope, and inshallah things will work out. But it's a challenge. It is a challenge.
So I think the question was in terms of the Muslim community and disability in general. So growing up, we never really went to the masjid. So our parents always arranged for a teacher to come home and teach us, because the local masjid, the Al-Emaan Centre, was around that time. But the local masjid, they either it wasn't wide enough, or there wasn't provision to have like other masjid. So mom and dad always just arranged something for them. What that means generally is the community isn't exposed to disability, because if you don't allow disabled people to come into the masjid, how people don't have exposure, going to be exposed to it. But luckily, like I'm not doing that today's event, we do a lot in that sense. So I think that was one big thing. So we didn't really grow up with big Muslim community around us. Like we had our family, but not like we didn't necessarily know the local Muslims that lived near us. I had a friend or two at school, but that was about it.
My experience, I've always been a person for the masjid. Forever I am. But I've discovered after getting myself getting in university, there's been a challenge. I've discovered the misunderstanding, the stigma that people have. And the friends I have, friends I had, some of them think maybe it's those are genes, that's the blood, the evil eye. So why don't you go to Makkah? Go to Medina. There's some sheikhs you can read very do one that say go to Libya. Such things. Sometimes when you go to the masjid, people that used to associate with, they give you that look. What time are you shocked? I went to one sister had to get out from Salah. My son was touching her son. She got out and then she said, "What did my son? You need to stop. You stop." I said, "How can somebody get out of Salah to point to a child who has cognitive disabilities?" And then another time, as a parent, this child you come actually be finding the prayer time that you get come to the person you expect to do one thing to get that peace. Because my son likes the message. When he comes to the mosque, my son switches on the lights. The first thing he does, switches them on, switches them back on. I said, now some people don't understand. They switch them off. And I said, I think we just have to tolerate that because they are going for short time. What's this thing when I come and stand to this from far away? I said, even putting the bag is sometimes you're too tired to push it down from the bag in the yard up here. Then I said, but you're a carer, He said, you have a disabled bag. I said, I'm a carer to this boy. Oh, you can't park here. I said, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm too tired. And then we came to the then after I said, oh, sorry. I didn't know that child was there. I thought I just stand the bus in the park with your care. I discovered some people don't understand what carers go through. This is the 24/7 job. By the time you are tired, you are isolated. You can't come to the bus with your tricks to expect that welcome. Today I tested something. I was just sitting there to see how people react to my son. Sister, oh, assalamu alaikum. They would just pass by. Then others they started, oh, how are you? How are you? And then you that light, the eyes of the ball. And then you go to the church. There's this in Bromley, they have a very good service. This is by the church. A person gets playground. These are you feel more welcome in the church than the mosque. I said, than this person for playground. When you go to shopping, you find, oh, how are you? They welcome you. Welcome them to the mosque. I don't know how, maybe it's that misunderstanding, or we don't know unapproachable disabilities, we just feel left alone.
I think,
With gen-
yeah, I think a lot attitudes. So I think generally we all want to do the and we all know what the thing is to around people. But I think sometimes we miss the how. So I know I've come to do needs prayer last year at Al-Emaan Center in the last month. And we went in, we were one of the first few arrivals, and it was kind of like, oh, are they in the wheelchair? Do you mind moving to the side, right? To make room for others. You know, we can't have you in the middle of the stuff because people might not want to pray behind you because of the wheelchair. You know, sit kind of to the side. You know, do you mind waiting until everybody else is in? Then we'll get you in at the end, right? So I think a lot of it is attitudes, and I think it's a lot of the things are simple fixes. And I think when we kind of get the attitudes right, people hear about stories, people will change. And I think it will improve things. But I think attitudes is a big one. You know, in terms of just-
So that leads me on to the next question around what's the one thing the community and the mosque lodges can do to make a difference. Attitude has been one of them. I think I would just say with regards to education and ensuring there is that education, and we're bringing people to the front, not pushing them to the sides, which is something that inshallah is very easy to do, right? That's the reality as well.
Yeah, I think education is a big one. I mean, we're not alone in this as a community. I go out there, I speak to organizations, I spoke to multinational organizations, I spoke to companies that, yeah, they've got 10 people working for them, right? And when you speak about disability, people will go, oh yes, the person in the wheelchair, it's, you know, people with neurodiversity, maybe autism. They'll know what it is. But when it comes to a deeper understanding, to a level where you can empathize, you might know the story, or you know kind of models of disability or how to think about it, right? That's where the issue becomes that deeper level. So hopefully through doing events like this, through doing purpose-led events, and through inviting members of our community to come and share their stories, also just be at events. There's simple things. For example, when we put an advert out for an event, we should have, you know, an accessibility page that comes with that advert, telling people how accessible the event is. Does it have step-free access? Are there disabled toilets available? Right? In terms of neurodiversity, is there going to be any flashing lights? Is there space where kids can go to just off steam, right, at this event? So, you know, I mean, I think I did look at the masjid website. I'm not sure we have an accessibility page, right? So these are little quick fixes that mean a lot to the community and will bring people in, right? It's happened in other organizations, simple things like fixing the website.
So other than I was speaking this earlier today about the fact that not only is the awareness around disability quite limited amongst the wide population, because so many people can go through so much of their lives without meeting or knowing anyone with disability. But the irony is that I think 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 people will actually experience some of this disability at some point in their lives, just varying degrees, especially children. So in certain disability subcommunities, it's not a distinction between disabled and able-bodied. It's a distinction between disabled and not yet disabled. It's worth bearing in mind, just from the purpose of from the perspective of enlightened self-interest, how that might manifest itself, and the idea about disability access pages to places like this is really, really important, just in that regard.
So I think we already touched on this, but yeah, mindset's probably the biggest thing we need to change within our communities. And like Sister Sons have also touched on this idea of black magic, or you know, parents must have done something which like this kids to say that's always there. I've always seen it growing up, that's always there in the background. So instead of we need to teach our next generation, instead of looking at saying blind, for example, and saying, well, alhamdulillah, I'm blind, and that's and we should say, oh, look, God has burdened us with something that my soul can deal with, therefore that's it must be so much stronger than my soul. I think that will change people's mindset of how they view disability. I think mindset is the biggest thing that we need to change.
But I think it's getting the professional people who can help us this course as a message. We have people with different abilities. How can we tap to these people? We have speech therapists, we have occupational therapists, we have physiotherapists, we have special needs teachers, because there are some things, disability is a big thing. So as a message, I think we need to identify who are these people, where can help us in this course, because it's a big, big thing.
Any other questions from the audience? Yeah. No, no.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Yeah, I want to make some recommendation. Yeah, I think it's be a good thing. Yeah, education, talking about education. I just pray that we'll continue this direction. Because one of the panelists have highlighted the importance of education. Because the more we talk about it, the more we know about it. Yeah, and that's one. Then added to that is I think it would be a nice thing if you could network with on the council. Yeah, because obviously councils are the ones behaving all these things within the community, but they do also welcome organizations within the community that we're saying. And if we network with the council, we can get access to certain resources and have it within our reach. For example, human resources that can facilitate education that we're talking about. Yeah, so on that.
I think this is what Sisters Alda was saying as well, as the people within the community have knowledge about us, so where we can put information in. So whenever there is anyone who can share that, obviously our doors are open. Yeah, please reach out to us and help us as well best as you can. Any questions from the sisters? Questions? Oh.
Any questions online?
This platform online. Look at that. Slightly down.
Yeah. Just scroll down. The question is, question to the panel, which Quranic passage or stories help you draw inspiration through tough times?
I think what was mentioned in the Quran always had some form of burden, some sort of trial that they were through. So you can always apply them to sort of any situation that you are in your own life.
Surah Al-Baqarah, it cannot alone, Allah is there, and understanding the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, told Surah Hadid, the first 5 verses, Surah Hadid, the first 5 verses, the qualities, Allah how he describes himself. I find that very comforting. You know, he's in charge, whatever's going on. And that's find Surah Al-Baqarah, very spiritual.
For me, it's to what Hira was saying around souls and the challenges that souls have. So in the Quran, I don't know the surah reference, but the essence of it is, the essence of the ayah is, soul is not burdened beyond what it can bear. Right? Now that means that whatever challenges you have in your life, they have been specifically designed for you by Allah. Right? Think about it. Took time to think about your life, what you're going to go through, and put challenges in place for you, also provided you with the help. Right? Now we can sit in a room here today, objectively, right? And we can say some people's lives are burdened heavier than others. Some souls carry a heavier burden than others, right? That's Allah saying that. Not me. So I might be better than the rest of you, but who knows? I'm joking. I mean, I think that for me I take a lot of solace in that Allah's always there, right? And He's always helping you with whatever challenges you have. And He's never going to give you a challenge that you will not have the ability to overcome. Right? So the safety, yeah, that's like a ready-built safety net for anything that might come in your life. You can say, yeah, Allah's thrown it on me, but you know what? He's going to give you the help to get through it as well. So yeah, I'll take a lot of solace in that.
Any other questions from the audience?
I have two daughters with learning disability, and one of the things I wonder about is what MOS can offer them in terms of, you know, compared to what normal people would expect from MOS. MOS. And what can MOS do in the future to improve what we're looking at for this both physically and cognitively?
That's a good question. Maybe let me answer this first before I kind of give it back to the panel. And inshallah, as in one of the things we're trying to do as part of Al-Emaan Center is put together a kind of steering committee around disability. And inshallah, then this will kind of support us in the way we support people with disability across the community. In terms of what we can do, I think this is a question that we need to ask the people who we'll be serving to understand in terms of what they want from us. And this is something that inshallah as part of, then today has been a kickoff to kind of start the conversation. And inshallah, we will have this conversation kind of grow and evolve to a point where we can start now having initiatives, we can start activities, we can have a bit of a roadmap in terms of where we want to go and how we go there.
Just on, because there's so much that's unknown, I think the initial stages in that process to understand what the community's composition is, where the needs are most great. So if we were basically putting together a questionnaire which will hopefully be disseminated inshallah, and it basically asks for people's thoughts about where the area of most need is, whether it's with young children, whether it's with actual learning difficulties, elder care, whatever sort of impairment, whatever stage of life, and whether the person is a person with a disability, whether they're a carer, or they're someone with a disability. Because there's so much that's unknown, people are essentially in their own little pockets of experience, and the first step is to actually tap into that to understand what's actually happening.
I think as well, just bringing people together. So I know we have a coffee morning every month. I think the masjid. I think opening events that up to members of the community that have disability need of carers, right, and specifically making an effort to invite them, right, to those kind of events, but also maybe holding events specifically for those people. What a lot of communities do is they hold sort of disability specific events for people to come and share their experiences so that people have a shoulder to almost lean on within the community and speak to other parents, other people that can understand what they are experiencing, right, and can kind of help support each other. And in addition to that, I think moving forward, we can invite other services and also learn from what other people are doing. But that is something, inshallah, we, as steering with around that, realize there's a need and we need to find out what that need is and then address it.
I think this is number one. So there's that concern. At one time I was pretty Bradford because there are so many services on it. They are organized and departing. I got the sister. Is it for the whole day? Should I come to Bradford? It's just a few hours. There's a lot going on in the north of England, and there is a lot in the east. And I also like in Havana Mosque, they organize something. There's a sister organizing what is it called masjid one day. That's a tough very big. Just calling in, simple. I've never met that sister. But if you just organize something simple, it can be like during half term, people just coming, they come for talks, and then we hear from them, what do they want? What are the services that they need? Sure.
Okay, we've hit, we're soon to 9:45. I'll open the floor for one more question. And if there's not, then we can, shall I go to some closing thoughts in panels? No, okay, cool. So I think we've answered this already, but just in summary, in terms of inshallah, what we want to see from now onwards, I think that's a way to close. Sisters, John, to start with you. Yeah, in terms of what we want to see going forward.
For the summary, for me, I go back to the simple, how the Sirah, started simple and then moved up. I think it's getting a group of people who can move this few people, and then they can plan something, and then it doesn't be complicated. Simple as you plan for bigger things. Sure.
So hopefully off the back of this, have a lot more sort of awareness days, and we can do a lot more to get more inclusive events done. So I think that would be the next step, and also just slowly changing the mindset of people of how they view disabilities. In the workplace, there's already so much being done. We just need to implement that within the rest of the community, within the masjid, or even within our own families. There's still steps that can be taken to do a lot more to include people.
So I think I'd say using mosques better to integrate members of the community who have hitherto been ignored or left aside. Social I have on that part of my children. So thank you very much.
I think for me, I think any community can be judged by how they treat the most vulnerable people in their society. And for me, I think if in 3 years I can come to Al-Emaan Center to a Jummah prayer on a Friday, and I can look amongst the crowd and see true diversity, right, and true inclusion based on race, gender, disability in particular, right? And those people at the Jummah prayer and families speaking to each other, right, and integrating. I think at that point we will have achieved our goal. And I think there are steps we can take to get there. I think the ultimate aim should be that all families should be able to come to the masjid as a hub and feel that they can come and feel like they've been. I think we can take steps to do that. So I look forward to that journey. It'll be a long one, but inshallah, it'll be as well.
A beautiful way to finish. For everyone who's on the call, Jazakallah khair for tuning in. For everyone here face to face, Jazakallah khair for coming in. I know it's very cold outside, but it's all well worth it. Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, link out our broadcast message. If you're not on our WhatsApp broadcast, please come to me, and inshallah we can get yourself joined, and you'll see all our events that happen. If you're going to sign up to our email, please sign up to our email. Subscribe to our social media channels, and inshallah all the events that we do you'll see coming through into your device. Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuhu.